SC Media and our sponsor, Sempris, are proud to present this month's CISO Stories podcast. Hosted by yours truly, Jessica Hoffman. This is a show where CISOs share tales from the trenches and unpack leadership lessons learned along the way. Listen to previous CISO Stories podcast episodes at CISOstoriespodcast.com. The Cyber Risk Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, please visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CRC. All right. Greetings. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of CISO Stories Podcast. I'm your host, yours truly, Jess Hoffman. We got another special guest here today, Will Klusovsky. You know, I didn't do it too early with the V, as you said. Welcome, man. Thank you. Thanks for coming and joining us today.
Yeah, excited to be here. I love doing this kind of stuff, helping out anybody who wants to listen. I'm happy to talk to them. So this is always good.
Yes, I believe that's how I met you. So first off, you look nothing like your LinkedIn photo. Okay, like Q photo here. Okay,
Right.
You look nothing like that. And what's funny is when I met you a year ago, I automatically knew that was you on LinkedIn. But now I'm like, that doesn't even look like him. When I saw you the other day, I don't know if
the beard got longer or the hair got more receding, but it's probably that.
Whatever it is, we're here. Okay. So, yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about incident response today, being proactive, reactive, all that good stuff, and your experience being a vCISO. I'm really interested in that because, you know, there are some similarities between a vCISO role and CISO, but there are also some polar opposites in a lot of cases. So, before we get started, though, on your LinkedIn, I love what you have written here on your title page. It says, you want to do cybersecurity better? I can make it happen. You want to see the ecosystem through the trees? I can help. What the heck does that mean? Tell us, please.
I love it. Those who know me know I think differently. I have a different perspective on things. The ecosystem is literally that. It's taken that translation from seeing the forest through the trees. I tend to work at a really high level. And so when I see security, I think about all of the other aspects that it hits. So regardless of if I'm talking about incident response or we're talking about, you know, a security assessment or security operations, like I understand how it all kind of impacts. And so for me, that's my brand I'm trying to put out there, right? Make sure everybody knows that I'm here to help and do stuff like this where, hey, I'm happy to, like I told you, Jess, I'll talk about anything. I don't care. And I could talk for a long time about it too. So I often say I know a whole little about a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are in that boat. There's just so much to learn, period, and no period in our field. And it's super exciting. And I know you get excited about it, which is awesome. So yeah, tell us a little bit about maybe some of the experiences you have being a vCISO, you know, the guidance that you provided and the strategic leadership and strategic direction when it comes to like incident response and being proactive. Let's start there, especially how you integrated some software and tools and using artificial intelligence, machine learning. We all know basically everything we buy nowadays is a COTS product, even if it's customized, has that in the background. So how has that helped you and helped strategize with your clients to make the incident response program and SOC program stronger?
Sure. So there's two parts of that, right? Let's hit the AI thing first because that's what everybody talks about. But
Active Directory is the #1 target for cybersecurity threats, and it's a threat that's harder to detect and prevent than ever. Because in the process of adopting, managing, and securing each unique AD environment, organizations develop separate teams using separate tools and separate silos, which means neither team can detect the threat across silos until it's too late. To combat today's cyber attacks, enterprises like yours need a way to see the whole picture beyond silos and secure their entire hybrid AD environment. Now you can with Sempris. Visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/Sempris.
You know, when you're looking at like what we've seen happening in the industry, obviously, I mean, I've been in consulting and managed services for a long time now, more than half my career. And we were using machine learning, 20 years ago, probably at least 15 or so. So that's nothing new, and kind of helping to identify things faster, the threats. But now we're starting to see within the SOC with good automation tools, with good tooling on the artificial intelligence, being able to make sure that when your people are working, they're working on the things that are important, right? So not wasting time on tier one if you don't have to, right? Being able to clear out all that false positives, all those noise relatively quickly. You know, if you're running a penetration test or you're working through the attack surface side of the house, or even doing, you know, forensic investigation, whatever it is, having that tooling kind of do the stuff that we know we do all the time anyway, so that you can get your, let's be honest, it's your expensive resources, right? We've got people who are highly paid, who are highly skilled. You want them working on stuff that matters, not triaging, the BS, so to say. So that's kind of where I've seen the most traction in my experience around the incident response, the SOC, the AI stuff, right? That's what we're talking about. Then, from a vCISO perspective, I tend to work with a lot of SMBs, like really small, less than 50 people. We've had some debates on LinkedIn about what a vCISO is, and I've adopted and kind of rolled over on a lot of terms in my life. I fought against the use of the word cybersecurity for a long time and finally succumbed. And I think with vCISO is another one where I've kind of just succumbed and realized it's kind of really advisory services. Like, I have an executive mindset. For some of these companies, I am the security person. So yeah, technically, I guess I'm the CISO, but I'm not signing the dotted line on anything. But we are talking about, I don't have any real responsibility. Let's be honest with it. But from that stage, it is really about, these businesses, they need to have an incident response plan. They need to test that plan, right? So I've worked with some companies that are really great. We build it into their DR and their BCP. They're doing backups hourly because they're small enough that they can do that. They're running tests multiple times a year, not just once, right? Obviously, the larger you get, the more complex it is. And, I think in the last maybe last decade at least, the insurance companies have kind of come out of the woodwork and helped a lot of these smaller businesses by hooking them up with, skilled individuals, right? Or partnering with other security firms to be able to provide that instant response, where before, we're writing out all the policy for these organizations and saying, hey, when an incident happens, you're going to call the law enforcement. You're going to do these things. Here's how you're going to deal with it. But not having somebody, not knowing who to call or not having a retainer, you have to have that these days. You have to know who you're going to call, and you have to have people on retainer if you don't want to pay $500+ an hour for somebody and hope they show up in 2 weeks because their bench is busy.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point as far as really depending on the business size and even the services that they provide. Incident response absolutely varies, and especially smaller businesses that there's no compliance regulations or any kind of regulatory data that they're processing. They might be an afterthought, right? So they're going to rely on their cloud services or those COTS products to assist them with incidents, or they're just inheriting the risk, right? So you mentioned about cyber liability insurance. If we could just switch for a second. So you mentioned a couple things as far as the small businesses leveraging services that they had. Have you guys done? Are they supportive of like tabletop exercises with the small businesses? Have you been a part of that? Like, what have you seen the benefits like as far as when it comes to your strategic planning that you've gotten from the cyber liability insurance?
Yeah, I think honestly, most of the insurance companies, they want you to do the stuff, but insofar as it helps them evaluate the risk, and that's kind of it, right? You may have a partner who is going to say, "Hey, we're gonna have this organization for you as a retainer. This is the people you're going to call. They're also going to be the people that are going to, do the tabletop exercises with you, things like that. But also, there's a lot that won't do it. So I think it's a mixed bag of, depending on the type of organization you're working with. I think it's most important for people to realize that your cybersecurity insurance company is an insurance company. They are not a cybersecurity firm. So as much as they're going to advise you, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, a well-seasoned CISO who knew, what they had to put in place. He's reading through, the entire agreement on what they have to do, what the insurance company is going to do. and really just calling out like all the things the insurance company like maybe has written, but doesn't really communicate to you, right? So it's that same thing, like read the whole contract when you sign up for it. So, you know, don't just rely on the insurance company to assume everything is going to be good. Go ahead and look through it. And so because you do want to have somebody that can do those incident response tabletops. So if in the contract you don't see that you're going to get a tabletop exercise once or twice a year, you know, ask them about that, or find, you know, you can have a guy like me or somebody else, you know, that can kind of reach out and get those scheduled for you and work through them, because it is critical to do it, right? And now it's all risk dependent. Like that's assuming you have an environment that you just can't wipe and replace, which some people do, right? So that's the other part. Don't overpay. If you got one server and you back it up to the cloud every day, and your IR plan is to rebuild that thing and keep on trucking, you know, you still need somebody to come in and make sure it's cleaned up, though. That's the one thing. Don't think because you're so small you don't need to have a response plan, because you may have been breached a lot earlier on and it may still be in that backup when you recover it, and they may still be there.
So, you know, we talked a little bit about the other day too about legal representation. And you mentioned, you know, being a vCISO, and that's probably the most common difference I've heard as far as vCISO versus a CISO, that you're not signing on a dotted line kind of thing. You're not taking, you know, but it could completely be virtual. So, you know, have you had experience, or do you advise counsel or early on, or, you know, what kind of thought process is it when it comes to that kind of relationship?
Yeah, I am always the first person to tell you I am not a lawyer. So
you look like a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. So you know, when talking to the organization, it is about, hey, look, here's the plan we've put in place. Here's, you know, usually we do some kind of assessment to get a maturity plan in place, help them kind of run that long term. But almost always it's like, but consult your lawyer, especially like I've done several, you know, GDPR engagements with organizations when it first came out, because everybody was like really freaking out about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. We'll build your GDPR program. Like that's easy. Like I can tell you what to do, how to build it, but also go call your lawyer, right? Consult legal, because that is you know, when you talk about something like data privacy, when you're talking about, you know, the potential for a 3-letter organization knocking on your door because something happened, that is something where you want to make sure your legal's in. And it's not just a matter of, like, it's good practice, obviously, to cover yourself from that legal aspect. But actually just went to an event this week where they had a panel full of, you know, 3-letter agency people basically talking about how, you know, FBI, HSI, CISA, all those kind of work together and do their stuff, and how they work with legal firms. I mean, most people, I mean, if you think about the international sort of, you know, hacker stuff that goes on in the world and apprehension and all that, all of those agencies are literally working with lawyers all over the world. They have attachés that's just, you know, there's a room full of lawyers and a room full of special agents or whatever, and they're all working together to do the same thing. So in the private sector, you should be doing the same thing. Your legal should be well aware of what you're doing, how, you know, what the plan is when it happens. They should be part of the, you know, the exercise, right? When you talk about, you know, incident response planning, the CEO should be part of that exercise, right? You want to see how your organization is going to respond. You want to hear what the lawyer is going to raise their hand and say, and how that may conflict with the person who's actually running the operations. Because you don't want to have the first time all of those people are talking together to be when something actually happens in real life.
Since you're not on the hook, you're not on the hook for anything. Do you have any kind of like liability?
I don't personally. So I've built and ran vCISO practices at the enterprise level as well, like in my past consulting life. Again, a lot of those are positioned to, so in the enterprise space, they're going to have a CISO. They're not contracting out that signing on the dotted line. What you're going to be doing is maybe be like a deputy CISO. You're somebody who has the level of skill to do the job, and you're really there to take the pressure off of the CISO, maybe run some projects or programs, things like that. You have a programmatic approach to it, so you can help. A lot of the stuff that we would sell under the vCISO moniker ended up being, you know, program management or managed GRC types of engagements, or, you know, long-term projects that maybe, you know, In this, as you get down lower, then into the more mid-market places that actually don't have a CISO and can't afford one, then things like a fractional CISO or vCISO make a lot of sense. But again, I don't know anybody who is actually signing on and saying, hey, I'm liable. Yes, I'm telling you that everything you're doing is, heck, I don't even know from a full-time employment standpoint. You know, there are cases, obviously now there's being precedent set. So the whole landscape is changing. You know, a few years ago, nobody would have probably thought you could get arrested for doing your job, right? So to speak. So, but now things are much different. So I got to imagine anybody on the consulting contracting side of the house is making sure they have no liability, right?
Yeah. Going the easy way out. I figured. Yeah. I mean, I think that might be a legal thing too. You're not a full-time employee. So, I mean, yeah, that's something. I don't know if the listeners, I mean, vCISO isn't anything new per se, but I don't know if a lot of people really know what it is exactly, like where the law or, the line is drawn there. Okay. So here's the question. So since you're the vCISO, I got a funny story about that liquid death too. That throws me off. That drink. No, it's fine. I thought it was beer one time. I was at a festival and I was like, yeah, let me try that liquid death beer. That sounds good. And it was only like $5. And I was like, this is the cheapest beer they have here. And I drank some and I was like, this beer tastes like shit. And my girlfriend's like, it's water.
It's the most expensive water there. That's what it was. It wasn't the cheapest beer.
All right. Question. As a vCISO, would you pay or not pay the ransom? What would you advise? Pay or not pay?
I don't like paying. I think at the end of the day, we shouldn't be funding terrorism, right? That's really what it is. You're giving that money back. And in most cases, again, you call the authorities immediately and get them involved. I mean, I think there was an event the other day that happened. And I don't know, within 72 hours, the government agencies recovered like, 90 some odd % of what was stolen. So I think in a lot of cases you don't pay it, especially and in the mid market, small market. I mean, mid market's always going to be like probably where they're people are really going to consider it. But in the smaller market, like if you have a really good recovery plan, you can kind of you don't really. If you're talking about ransomware, then yeah, like why pay it if I can just rebuild it, right? So I don't like paying it.
Okay, so I guess that's something like the smaller businesses you touched on a little bit ago about, and just now that if they could just wipe it clean and move on, like they don't necessarily need to recover. So is that something that when you're working with your clients as a vCISO? And strategizing their incident response, proactive and reactive situation, and obviously ransomware, I'm sure, is a topic of discussion, like, and as well as like continuity of operations, period. So, is that something like you sit down and actually talk to them about, like, hey, how important is this data? Can we, if you lost everything, would you go bankrupt? Would you, need to change your name for reputation? I mean, how do you approach that with small businesses? Just curious, because you hear a lot about small businesses going under because of these situations that happen. So, like, is that something that you really focus on and, up front and be like, hey, if this happens, you either gonna pay or not pay, or, you might experience some serious impacts that could put you out of business?
Yeah, it's absolutely part of the conversation. I almost always start, regardless of where the program is, at that sort of asset level. Like, do you have a business impact analysis? Do you have data criticality? Right? Do you even understand what is critical to your business? Right? Because that's the first step. So always starting there with understanding what the value of the assets and the data are, and then making sure, because that always helps to say how much protection are you going to put in place, and then that also kind of gives you perspective on now if this is down, I'm losing money at X rate, and the option is to pay, X amount of ransomware out to this person or recover it, which is going to take me this long. And in that recovery process, this is where it's also very, very important. You got to make sure you having the recovery plan is great, but you still need somebody to come in there and do the forensics. You still need that investigation to figure out, how it happened, why it happened, make sure they're still not there. That's the biggest thing you don't want to do is like bring it back up and then the screen just locks up again. So it's definitely not a shortcut way to do it by saying, oh yeah, you can just recover. You still need to do all the right things from a response standpoint. So that's definitely something we talk about.
Awesome. So yeah, where do you think, as far as future is going when it comes to incident response? Like, do you think that well, we've been in the cloud for quite some time, but let's stick with the small business, because I feel like, a lot of times we're looking at the larger businesses, the government agencies, and the small businesses sometimes get left behind. Sometimes they don't even have a thought about security. I think it's better now because, we have multi-factor on everything, personal stuff. So it's not like people aren't aware of the risks associated with publicizing their data on social and, screen or shoulder surfing, excuse me, and connecting to public Wi-Fi and stuff like that. But where do you see like incident response strategically for the future for these small businesses?
I think we're in a pretty good place. That's going to kind of there's kind of a triangle. You got the client, the client, whoever, the organization themselves, and then they have to, most of them don't have security teams, or they're using an IT outsourcer even. So like some of these companies, they'll have 2 or 3 people size business who manage, they've got hundreds of servers for, across hundreds of clients because it's pretty small, right? But they weren't security skilled really either. So a lot of times we're advising them, as well as now you've got, managed security services, which provide quite a bit of security capability for those smaller organizations. So that helps them reduce that risk quite a bit. It helps them get access to the resources they need to be more protective. And a lot of times those MSSPs are going to have the response capabilities. They're going to be tied in with the insurers. And then now, as we saw the insurance companies come out and really start to partner with the response teams, I think there's a lot of, there's obviously scalability in that. It's also pretty, I won't say easy, but as a small or medium-sized business owner, you kind of know where to go now, right? So the future, I think that the only kind of thing that I think is probably going to happen is as the insurance companies start to take control a little more of the response aspect of things, they may start to do things that reduce some flexibility. So for instance, if you have a managed security provider who's, doing all your firewall monitoring, your SIM monitoring, and they also do incident response services, you may have a cyber insurance company that says, well, if you have a breach, you can't use them, right? We need separation of duties. You can't have them. And in some cases, you can see why that makes sense. But in other cases, that kind of monopolizes where they have to go for incident response plans too, because they're almost always going to go to the insurance provider unless they start providing some different ones. So I think we're in a good place. I don't know. I do believe we're going to have, more as AI advances, obviously, the ability to do response. I mean, we're starting to see detection so fast, it's almost prevention, right? So hopefully we reduce the amount of response that has to happen. And I still think, a vast majority of incident response is just ransomware, right? So it's kind of like, we need to solve that problem. I don't know how. I wish I did. If I did, I'd never have to work again, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, great stuff, Will. We're coming up to the end, but I just got to ask what you got written in all those scrolls behind you. What's going on? You like Ninja Scroll? What's up?
That's the wine cellar. So yeah, that's personal hobby of mine. I make wine and beer, among other multiple hobbies. There's some store-bought stuff in there too. So no shortage ever.
Okay, just drop your email and address right here, sure. And we'll check you later. Okay, I like to end the conversation with this is my question. I love it. So, Will, tell us, what would you tell your 18-year-old self about the future?
What does that have to be cyber related?
No.
Okay.
Whatever.
Don't get in debt. Avoid debt at all costs. Do what makes you happy, not what makes money. That's exactly what I would tell my 18-year-old self.
Like making beer and wine?
Yeah, just find something that makes you happy and do that.
Right on. Awesome. Where else can we find you at, Will?
LinkedIn, I'm there all the time, literally. So that's where I'm at. You can find me there. That's pretty much it. I mean, and working.
Yes, seeing through the trees, the ecosystem. We got you.
Putting everything together.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Will. This was really great. Appreciate you joining the show. As always, good to see you. I'm sure we'll run into each other again.
Yeah, I'll see you at B-Sides. I'm speaking this year.
Oh.
We're going to do that.
Ooh, yes, we're doing that. All the B-sides, all the things. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the CISO Stories podcast. We want to say a special thank you to our sponsor, Sempris. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories podcast and you will receive a new story each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you next week for a new episode. Thanks for joining.